Welcome to another Bright Start Tennessee Network Lunch and Learn. This month we're covering summer learning camps. My name is Jonathan Schoonover and I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategic Practice. And today we will be joined by Tess Yates, the Senior Director of Learning Acceleration with the Office of Academics with the Tennessee Department of Education. Tess, take it away.
I know I saw a couple of you guys last month as we talked about tutoring and where we are in the tutoring world. Came back this month to talk about summer programming. I know we have a smaller group this week, so happy to go through kind of basic information quickly, answer any questions you have, just in thinking about summer, where we're going with summer, and what that looks like. The names I see on here, we are all connected to the education space in some way, and so we know that summer programming is coming fast. The end of the year is coming fast. I have my little panic moment this morning that it is now April 28th. Summer programming across the state is starting as early as May 22nd. I did that math. I looked across my calendar, and that is 4 weeks away. So we are in the final countdown to summer programming. So very relevant to talk through summer programming. I think some of the things we might talk through will be relevant for this year or might be helpful for next year. But in Tennessee, we have a required summer programming for every LEA and public charter school across the state that you provide summer programming to students. Through the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act 2 years ago in 2021, we put in place summer programming. And the initial law put in place summer programming for students in rising grades, first grade through 8th grade. So looking at those kiddos who are coming into first grade all the way through 8th grade and putting them into camps with some specific requirements for those camps. So within those camps, they were to be 6 hours a day. 4 hours of those were to be ELA and math in some combination, an hour of intervention, and an hour of play. And play can be recess, it can be full-on play, it can be structured, it can be less structured. And then we put in place stream camp for those younger students and what we call a bridge camp for those older kids. So legislation put in place these camps required them to begin running 2 years ago. So we're now at the place where we're going into year 3 for summer programming, and districts are starting to get the hang of this, see where they're going, see what they have going on. We also have the requirement of 4 weeks for that bridge camp for those other grades and 6 weeks for those younger grade camps. Districts are required to invite their priority students, so those students who are struggling academically within the classroom, to be part of these learning camps, and when they are given state funding in order to do so. And so these camps are taking place, districts choose when they're taking place. The big update to the law came this year and came through, I want to say about 3 weeks ago, with the passage of a new bill that extended summer programming. So in 2021, we put in place summer programming that sunsetted summer programming for those younger grades. And so going into this year, we knew we were going to do bridge camp for that 4-8 grade band, but we didn't have in place summer programming for all grade bands. So that new bill came through and got signed into law. And so going into this year, we actually have summer programming for rising kindergarten all the way through rising grade 9. So this year we're expanding. We're looking all the way rising kindergarten through rising grade 9, and that is to be continued indefinitely. So at this point of the year, districts have their funding and they're working on their applications, they're setting up their programming, and they're putting everything in place. So talking through a little bit about the intention of the law and the goals of summer programming across the state is really to catch those kiddos who need additional support and accelerate them in the summer. So this is one of the department's learning acceleration strategies, where we are looking to extend the school year by an additional 4 to 6 weeks. So we're taking kids, we're putting them in small groups, we're giving them access to that core curriculum. And so let's say you're a 2nd grade kiddo, you would be going to summer programming using 2nd grade standards to extend that school year and get additional targeted support for an additional 4 to 6 weeks. And so we put those kiddos in summer programming. We also add 1 hour a day of intervention block. So especially looking at, let's look at those early grades. What are those early literacy foundational skills that you need? Let's make sure you have an hour of that within summer programming. If you look at some of those older grades, where are students missing skills, standards, how do we support them with that intervention space? So this is really the goal of this, is to extend the school year by an additional 4 to 6 weeks to allow those students who need additional support time with the core curriculum for additional time. Um, we're excited this year, we're putting in place Rising Kindergarten Camp as well as Rising Ninth Grade Camp. And those are going to look a little bit different than our 1st through 8th grade camps. So our districts have been running the 1st through 8th grade camps. Now we're adding a camp for rising kindergartners. You think, what is a camp for rising kindergartners going to look like? We are really looking at how do we support students in getting used to the classroom. We have some students who have been in pre-K before. We have many students who have never gone to the school environment. How do we give these students structure, lessons, learning, access to math and reading in a structured setting so that these students will be successful on the first day of school? And so have designed very intentional programs that support kiddos with coming into the classroom, entering the classroom, learning math, learning ELA, getting that intervention, getting that play, but also learning some of those basic skills like counting, like sitting on the rug, how are we using the restroom, some of those really basic skills that we see those our earliest learners need going into kindergarten. The other area where we'll see this a little bit different is that 9th grade space. So camp is now extended to rising 9th grade students. And in rising 9th grade, we really are looking at how do we bridge that gap from 8th grade to 9th grade. We know that that's a huge jump for many students, and that's where some students struggle. You're going from more structured classes, more hand-holding, more support, to a much more free-flow high school space. So how do we support students from going from more structured ELA assignments to more open-ended ELA assignments? So extending that to 8th grade curriculum while saying, let's give you a little bit more access to some of the things that are going to be happening in that 9th grade space and preview some of that material for you. So we're excited to be able to offer that full range of rising kindergarten through rising 9th, because we know rising 1st through 8th is working for kids. We're seeing some great growth from kids, but excited to be able to offer that space in rising kindergarten and rising 9th to really help students with those transitions. So as the districts are thinking this through, districts know what the law says. They have the law in place. There's a few supports that we give them that they can use in order to put programs in place. So we give districts printable curriculum materials that they can use. So then a district can choose to use their current curriculum. They can choose to use a printable day-by-day curriculum for each of their grades, or they can choose to do a combination of that. And so we make that publicly available on our website so that districts can go through and just print resources if they want a printable curriculum aligned to Tennessee standards, or they can use their own standards. We also see many districts use some combination of, here's a core text that we wanted to go back to, and then we're going to use the lessons. Let's use those in combination. We offer districts also data systems to take attendance. We roster them to the testing platforms, and we provide support with all the testing platforms and tests and access to the tests. And then we also offer them training for their educators who are not licensed teachers. So if they have aspiring educators, they have alternative educators who are going to play a role in their summer programming, they can put them through a 5-module training that will give educators, the alternative educators, the basics of teaching prior to going into the classroom. So we offer that. It comes with a certificate, and so allows districts to support support teachers a little bit more before they go into the classroom. From there, districts get really the opportunity to design a program that works best for their communities. And we see programs looking vastly different across the state. We see start dates look different. We see end dates look different. We see structures look different. And this is where districts really design a program that works for their students and their families. So districts are inviting their priority students to participate, but they can choose when summer programming takes place. They can choose that start date and that end date. Districts also have the opportunity to waive some of the, to apply to waive some of the pieces of law. So they're required to do a 4 or 6 week camp, depending on the camp type, 6 hours a day and 5 days a week. districts can apply for a waiver to do things such as shorten their learning loss camp and stream camp to be 4 weeks to match their stream camp. They can apply for a waiver to move their camp from 5 days a week to 4 days a week, or they can apply to decrease the number of hours in a day. And we see this being used in various ways across the state. We'll have one district that says our Friday attendance is very low. We'd like to waive our Fridays. Or, hey, our educators are really not committing to teach a 6-hour day. We'd like to request a waiver down to 5 days. So we see these waiver flexibilities being used in different ways across the state by different districts. Districts get to choose the content that they're teaching as long as they are extending that core curriculum for their kiddos, either using the state provided or their own. And they can also structure their day however they want. So we know that they need to meet that 4 hours a day of ELA and math, the hour of play, and the hour of intervention. Within that, districts have a lot of flexibility about what this looks like. And then we also see a lot of districts plug in partners in this space. And so we've seen districts plug in partners into that play space to say, hey, we are going to partner with our local outdoor exploring nonprofit, and we are going to have students go and do something outside or go on a hike for their hour of play. We have seen them partner with, I'm looking at Ellie Cottrell on here, who I know has a tutoring grant, with partner with a tutoring provider to say, hey, Ellie, can you come in and provide that 1 hour of intervention during the day? So an example, I'm just calling on Ellie because I can see her face, to say, can you come in and provide that 1 hour of tutoring during the day to meet that intervention space? You have a cohort of highly trained tutors. Can you come into support here? We also see them plug into that stream space in unique and creative ways. Have even seen districts do something like move their stream requirement to Fridays and have their partner come in to provide a full day of stream once a week. So we see districts use partners in unique ways. We've also seen some districts extend their day with partners, saying, hey, we are going to provide our core academic content the first 5 hours. Then the last hour of play, my students are going to go to a community partner and get support, and then extend their day if parents need extended day schools. So we see districts use these flexibilities throughout the state in various and unique ways. But the exciting part about the programming is we do have requirements. The districts are doing that pre and post testing. They are doing attendance, and they're meeting the requirements of law. But then beyond that, they can kind of be flexible and creative to say, here's what's working for us. And finally, the last support that we've been able to give to districts is really spotlighting best practices. So we've seen some best practices across the state. We've gone out and seen what these look like. Between years 1 and 2, we've been able to go out and say, hey, Washington County is doing a stellar job with their curricular supports and how they've structured their programming to provide high quality curriculum instruction. Here's how they did it. Here's their resources. Here's their supports. Lauderdale County is crushing it at family communication. They've knocked it out of the park. They are reaching their priority students. They have emails, they have newsletters, they have tweets, they have Facebook posts, they have backpack flyers home. Here's access to all their materials so that you could take out the Lauderdale logo, stick your own logo on, and reuse that content. So we also have that available to districts to be able to say, great, let's constantly strengthen our program. Let's constantly make this better. Let me take some of those best practices. So that was a lot of me talking, very high level content overview of where we are in summer programming. We are in the place where we're getting ready to launch. We have programs launching as early as May 22nd. So we're in that kind of final sprint. Our districts are giving us their plans, submitting their waivers if they want to waive components of that law, hours, days, or weeks. And we're working to finalize students and staff attending. So excited for that to launch, excited to see what this looks like, and happy to invite anyone along to do any visits this year if you guys want to come along with our team as we go out and see some of these programs.
Thank you so much. Super helpful, a lot of information there. Let me start off. I'd love, first of all, to invite anyone that is here on the call, feel free to unmute and ask questions, or formally, do it officially like Ellie has and modeled it with raising the hand, like we're in a classroom. I love it. You could do that too. I'm going to take privilege and ask a question first off right away. Is there a deadline for districts or LEAs that are looking to provide or file waivers on things? Is there a timeline in which they need to do that? And do you have that date available?
Yep. So there's not a hard and fast waiver deadline. The waivers
Okay.
need to be submitted um, before the application can be submitted and before you can really design your program, because it's the days, hours, and weeks are the only three components that we can waive.
Got it.
That needs to go forward in order to allow for you to have flexibility in your application. The applications need to be approved prior to camp being approved.
Got it.
So there is no hard and fast deadline this
Got it.
year in terms of waivers or applications, but waivers need to come before applications, and applications need to be approved and final before camps can start.
Makes sense. Ellie?
Yes, thank you. So my ears perked up when I heard you talk about camp for rising kindergartners.
Mhm.
I had not heard about that. And so I'm wondering if that's something, is that an optional age range for LEAs to serve? It is not.
It is
And
important.
Okay, so they have to provide a rising kindergarten camp. What is the priority of, how are we prioritizing children that are served through those camps? Is my first question. And I have more.
Yes. So rising kindergarten is kind of that stranger space, because you are not giving your preschoolers a standard assessment and saying, here's where our kiddos, our priority students fall. The requirement in law is to be able to offer rising kindergarten camp to priority students. It needs to be offered, it needs to be available.
And how are priority students identified?
Yep. One of the easiest ways to kind of think about that from a district lens is your kids who qualify for VPK would be your same students who qualify for kindergarten. Districts also thinking through, and I think looking at faces on this call, you also know who are your kiddos who will need that additional support before kindergarten starts. How are we reaching them? How are we doing outreach to them? How are we getting those families through the door? We know there's going to be a cohort of families that ready to go, ready to sign their kindergartners up. We also know there's a group of families that we have to reach out and be very proactive to get their kids in school, to get their kids in kindergarten. That's the group we want. And so it's our VPK kids, it's your kids who have not had access to preschool in any way. How do we get them recruited and through the door into a camp prior to school starting?
And are there, within the summer camp requirements, is there assessment happening during the summer camp? That's like a required assessment from the state for those students?
For rising kindergartners?
Yes.
There are kind of like mini checks and I would say loose leaf assessment, which we can provide. I can also share with you kind of what that would look like. Your first through ninth grade students, there is a comprehensive assessment. Those kindergarten students, we have a very basic, I would kind of just say check for understanding at the end of camp to see how students are progressing.
Well, the reason I'm asking is, I think this is actually a really big gap that we are seeing is, if a child's developmental delays or, whatever, if they have not been identified prior to starting kindergarten, in many instances, it's taking, several months to develop an IEP. So if we were able to get that type of assessment during this summer camp, that would give us a huge leg up in getting that student and family the wraparounds that they need. Has that been discussed at all, building into the summer camp requirements for the rising kindergartners?
Something like a more comprehensive assessment. We have only talked about the kind of check for understanding to see how the kiddos are progressing. But let me take that back to the team as well to see if there's something that we can build in terms of flagging students who may be showing gaps after going through summer programming.
Yeah, that would be huge. Thank you.
It's a
Thanks
great
for flagging
question.
that. I like that point.
Very good question. Other questions? We got one in the chat, and while you're thinking of other questions, let me read this from Heather Logan. This is in Northeast. I heard waivers are being used. Is it possible for the rising kindergarten camps to just be a week or two, or is there longer requirements on those?
Yeah, so for the kindergarten camp is designed to be a 6-week camp. Districts can waive that down to 4 weeks if they would like. The additional flexibility that has been given to kindergarten for districts is that the kindergarten camp can run on a different schedule than other camps. So that is a reaction to hearing from a few districts that while they're holding their 1st through 9th grade camps, let's say May 22nd through June 26th, they really would like to move that kindergarten camp back to July through August so that those kindergarten students can have their camp start in July and then they run straight into the school year. And so they use that camp to get kids ready and then don't have that month-long break. So that flexibility is available for kindergartners, but we cannot condense it down to a week or 2.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Heather, feel free to jump on if you got any other clarifying questions with that. So question for you in the meantime, and again, please jump up, raise your hand, come off mute. We're pretty informal here. If you've got questions for Tess. In regards to resources around transportation, is there an increase in that accessibility of resources for transportation for folks with summer camps? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So districts do get a state provided allocation for transportation for summer. And so one of the big changes that has also happened, well, let's say in the last week, is that districts received an increased allocation. So we gave them increased allocation for their learning camps. So we had initially sent them an allocation about 2-3 weeks ago. And then on Friday last week, we sent them revised higher allocations just based on what we were able to push for legislatively and get an increase in the governor's budget for summer programming. So what we've done with that is we ended up putting all of their camp funding into 2 buckets. So now districts have a transportation funding bucket and a summer camp funding bucket. So districts can budget their entire camp across Rising K through Rising 9 programmatically. And then they can put the rest of their money in transportation. So that is a separate budget, and they will budget separately from there. Within the transportation space, they can use additional summer programming budget, they can use their ESSER funding, they can use state and local funding. And I would say, in general, looking across our districts, we are able to see many of them are able to provide full transportation using the funding that we are giving them. I would say you are always going to have some outlier districts, but in general, we are able to meet the needs of most transportation for districts with the funding that we are giving.
Yeah, that makes sense. Appreciate that. I've also realized I missed a question from Brandon in the chat. Brandon, I'm happy to read this to you, or you feel free to. Yeah,
I don't mind to come off mute. Hey, Tess. So you mentioned that there's flexibility in maybe dropping the total number of hours during the day, but I'm just hearing from a lot of district officials about the challenge of recruiting, particularly older students, like the 5th, 6th, all the way up through 8th grade students to come. Obviously we want to maximize the number of students attending, but what I'm hearing is that many students and or their families don't want them to come because it feels like school, right? When you've got a set number of hours and, school systems are competing against summer camp offerings or just, hanging out at home. It sounds like there's probably not any flexibility on the instructional hours. And if there's not, can you point to any school systems or case studies of successful recruitment with high attendance for upper elementary and middle school students?
Yeah, and I think good point, Brandon. We definitely see that attendance gap in those upper grades rather than those lower grades. When we're thinking about summer programming, we really are thinking about who are those kiddos who are struggling academically throughout the school year, and how do we provide the supports for them to continue um, to grow prior to moving to the next grade level. So how do we extend that school year? We are providing quite a few additional hours of instructional time. Law is very clear about the instructional hours. Um, Districts can request to waive up to 1 hour a day and can choose what that looks like. I mean, we review all their proposals and make sure that we are still providing students with academic structure. I would say in terms of who is doing this well and what does this look like, one of the first things is setting expectations. I think we are seeing places where a district tries to compete with the Fun Summer program and says, this is going to be so cool, come to this summer program, you'll get a bike if you come the whole time. Kid comes, they spend a lot of time reading, they get a bike. Not the best way, expectations are not aligned. The other option is, hey, your kid is struggling academically. This is one of the options to catch them up to grade level prior to them moving to the next grade. Yep, there's academics. We will build fun into it. We'll build play into it. We'll make it engaging. We'll make it fun. However, it is still going to be academics. That framing and structure is working better. And we on the state side have tried to align our language to be a little bit closer to that as well. That is, this is summer programming. They're called summer camps, but it is not, you are not going to the water park every day and you are not doing the blob while you're at the water park. So we do have to kind of change those expectations. Within these academic instructional time, districts are not required to have students sitting in seats the whole time. And so creatively thinking about, okay, if we have 4 hours of ELA in math, we are probably going to spend some time reading. We're probably going to spend some time doing some core lessons. How do we build math into something fun? How do we do summer projects that are engaging and interesting? We'll see theme weeks, we will see literacy themes, we will see students dress up, we will see the use of STEAM robots to be driven around the school because students are calculating numbers. So we are seeing some of that more project-based learning, working on standards, working on something, but embedding those standards in there. And that is where we're seeing more students show up and be engaged. So we're seeing bikes. It's nice to promise a bike for attending. Not working so well. More the aligning expectations and working with parents to say, you're coming to summer program because your kiddo is behind. We want to catch them up prior to the next grade level.
I get it. The difference between extrinsic and intrinsic rewards is really important to convey. Thanks, Tess.
Yes, and I would not suggest bikes. We have seen it tried and it doesn't work.
It's good. It's good insight. I think Nikki, if you're still there, I know you had raised your hand. If you're able to come off mute, feel free to ask your question.
I just had a quick question. I want to see how community organizations can be a liaison with the been around for almost 20 years, and we're a literacy program. And so we hold a 6-week summer camp every year for rising kindergarten through 5th grade students that focuses strictly on literacy. It is an 8 to 3 program, and we do pre and post assessments as well. So a lot of parents, I'm noticing, are pulling their students from our program, in particular because of the 3rd grade retention law, and them stating that in order for their child to move to the next grade, they will have to go to a district approved program. But many of the students that we serve are within the Metro National Public School District, and all of our teachers that teachers within the district as well. So I'm just trying to figure out what that balance is as far as being able to partner with the district to serve some of the students that they may have that are struggling.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, Nikki, I'm happy to also join any conversations. This goes for anyone too. If you want to work with districts on what this could look like, where this could go. I think, Nikki, where being an ELA focused organization can definitely plug in that space. In order to meet the requirements of this law, we do need to offer that 4 hours a day of ELA and math, with at least one of them being ELA and at least one of them being math, the hour of intervention and the hour of play. And so I think there's probably a world where you could partner with the Metro Nashville Public Schools to say, we will do the literacy focus side of this, and Metro Nashville does the math focus side of this, or something along those lines. The districts do have to offer this and to run the program, so they would have to be the ones taking attendance, doing the rostering, etc. But I'm happy to talk through details behind the scenes on that. But there definitely is a world where you could plug in, as long as you're using grade level materials aligned to state standards, to say, great, I'm providing 3 hours, 4 hours of literacy instruction to second graders, and Metro Nashville provides the hour of intervention in math in a given day, or something along those lines. So it would definitely have to be in partnership with the district, and would probably require some of that creative thinking of how do we meet the needs of the law, and how do we hold, like, the district does have to hold the attendance records there, but there is a world where you could work together to use your strength, use what your staff knows how to do, knows what you do best, with what Metro Nashville has to deliver for kids, in order to meet those requirements for summer programming.
Thank you.
There's some good questions. Anybody else have a burning question for Tess? Let me ask, while people are maybe still thinking, obviously there's been a lot happen over the past of the course legislative session, and there were some amendments filed that apply to some of the third grade retention, fourth grade promotion, that are not applicable to this year. Is there anything, and you may have mentioned this at the start of this, with the legislation that was passed around summer learning and the summer learning camps, is there a longevity to the commitment? How long did this legislation last? Is this like an ongoing thing, or is this something that is, I couldn't remember the details of that.
Yeah, so this legislation doesn't have an end date. So initially, the Learning Loss Remediation Student Acceleration Act was kind of a COVID recovery act, putting in place what does summer programming look like, how do we think we are going to be targeting students, and putting in place Tennessee All-Core as well as summer programming. The initial thinking behind the law was, we are going to catch kids up over the next 2 years, essentially. So we're going to use this acceleration strategy to catch kids up. What we've seen over the last 2 years is, one, high quality instruction within the classroom, as well as acceleration strategies is how we get kids to grade level. Number two, summer programming is working, and we still have a number of kiddos who are behind grade level in math or ELA. So why would we take away an acceleration strategy that is working, which has been the push for summer programming? So using this as an acceleration strategy to say, here's our kids who are not on grade level in ELA and math, let's offer summer programming as a way long-term to catch kids up to grade level prior to them moving to that next grade level, and to ensure that they don't have that summer slide that many students do have.
Makes sense. That's great. Any other questions for Tess as we talk about this? Any other things that you're thinking about or wondering about in regards to summer learning camps, or anything else? We've got a great group of folks that are still on here. Say small but mighty, but folks that are in this space and working on things. So feel free to jump on camera, come off mute. There's Dean. Hey, Dean, come on.
Thank you, Jonathan. Tess, Dean Hoskins, Governor's Early Literacy Foundation. Can you talk to us a little bit about numbers from last summer or anticipated for this summer, in total, by grade? I know parents were encouraged to sign up back in February and March, particularly for the third grade because of the legislation, but anticipated for kindergarten, et cetera?
So for this year, we are still getting our applications in. So Jean, I'm happy to follow up with you, and I know I have been talking to Misty a little bit about this as well. With our allocations being released and then our allocation update last week, we do not have those numbers yet. Just on the operational side on our end, us updating allocations for all the districts meant we kicked all of their applications back to them. So as of Monday, we had to re-review every single application for every single district across the state. So that is putting us a little bit delay in terms of numbers. When we are looking at numbers, last year we had 96,000 students across all the grade levels participating. The majority of those students were in that first through fourth grade space. We had about 50,000 students in that space. And then those older grades was about 40,000. So definitely, I said that wrong, 60,000 and 30,000. I'm reading the wrong numbers. And Gina, I'm happy to send you kind of a breakdown of where we were last year with all of the numbers, if that would be helpful as well. But we are having students sign up as we go. I would say across the state, you're seeing all sorts of different models. We have some districts whose students are already signed up. I was on the phone with the district this morning who sent out their registration forms earlier this week. So it is a little bit different across the state, but can definitely, I know you're supporting us in terms of especially that kindergarten space. And so we can work with you in terms of getting you the numbers, getting you a registration, getting you our enrollment. As of Monday, we should have a preliminary number of our fourth grade students. And then in the next 2 weeks, we should have preliminary numbers of all of our students across our grades. So we're kind of in the thick of it right now. Unfortunately, that increased allocation did kick everything back to districts and had them all start from scratch a little bit. But in the next 2 weeks, we should have a very solid sense of who this is and where our students across the state.
That's awesome and so understandable, but a good reason to kick it back for additional monies. Our kindergarten to third grade reading packs, teachers will have those in their hands by the second week of May. And students will have them at their homes by the second week of June. And so I think talking about how we can help coordinate those as an additional resource for rising first, second, and third grade in the camps could prove helpful.
Absolutely.
Dean, while you're, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, I appreciate your support in this. That's amazing.
Yeah. Dean, while you're on and off mute, do you want to share maybe if there's communities from Bright Start around the state that want to get involved in that and maybe aren't connected to it? How can they reach out to you, and what does that look like for partnering with you?
Yeah. So you can always contact us. The easiest way is info@governorsfoundation.org. We all have tn.gov email addresses as well, and our website is governorsfoundation.org. So that just makes it a little easier. The kindergarten to third grade summer program, we're not serving kindergartners yet because, as we've all mentioned, they're the hardest to identify who they are or who they will be. So rising first, second, and third graders across the state, if the district opted in, and we do have a few select districts that did not, but their students, teachers, and librarians will get a pack of grade level appropriate books, 3 fiction, 3 nonfiction, along with think sheets, caregiver resources. As I said, teacher and librarian packs coming to the schools second week of May, student packs coming to their homes the second week of June, maybe the first week of June, depends on the mail, that they will have. Those are aligned to standards, and there'll be additional resources through our website for teachers, parents, et cetera, that engage around those books and help children pull out some comprehension. And then Katie Elam is also on the call, who heads up our statewide Collaborative, Select. So we can, but anybody who wants to know more about those or specific to a district, or a copy of what those books are, titles, happy to engage with you.
And how, real quick, how do they know if a school district
Your
has
district.
opted in? Yeah. Is there a website, or is that something just to reach out to you directly?
Well, we haven't put the list of shame on the website, but it's not a bad idea, to be honest. Because it was offered to all districts. Most of the ones who are not participating, other than 2 medium-sized districts, are small, rural, and I think it was just a matter of extra work.
Capacity and
We
work.
have 136 out of the
fantastic.
142, and we have 30 of the 56 charter schools.
Fantastic.
So
So
if
I
you
know,
have a question specific about your district, just pop it in the email or the chat, and we can tell you pretty
Perfect.
quick.
I think the question was Knox County, but I think that sounds like they
Knox County's in.
is in. So there you go. That was the
We
impetus for the question.
We had to do a little shaming, but
Hey,
But we
it's all
got it.
good. All good. So listen, I appreciate everybody joining this. This has been another great, very insightful Bright Start Lunch and Learn. You guys will be the first to know the next one coming up in May. We're going to cover a topic that is unlike some of the rest of these, where we've been looking at strategies. We're going to dive into the release of the brand new Bright Start Tennessee data dashboard. So that will be public by then, and that'll be something that you guys will be able to do. We'll have our folks from Child Trends that have helped us to work on this and develop this as our technical assistants, to be able to kind of talk a little bit about the process that we went through to create this. And that'll be something that you'll all be able to play around with and look at starting later on in May. So we'll send out the registration for that. I will also send out the link for the evaluation of this session in email as well. So we'll do both of those things. Normally I do that in chat and give that to you here, but we'll do both of those things in follow-up email. Without any further ado, I guess if there's any other questions, we can take them. But other than that, I think I'll let you guys go another 60 seconds earlier to your day. All right. Thank you so much for everything, and we'll see you all next month. Thanks. Thank you, Tess.
Thanks, guys.